This summer is all about watercolor flowers. There are two ways you can join in the fun. Number one, if you want the basic tutorial, you're here, yay. Follow along with the video, paint your flower with me, and subscribe so you don't miss the other flowers that are coming out every week this summer. Option two, join Painting Through the Seasons, my new course that's all about painting watercolor flowers, but you'll get extra instruction on how to sketch your flowers, how to mix your watercolors, watercolor techniques each week. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want that extra guidance, scan the QR code to join me today. Now let's paint some flowers. A lot of the reference photos for Snapdragons have the stems going straight up and down, but I want some movement in my painting. So when I'm sketching, I know I want to do 3 stems, but I'm going to make them kind of come together in the center, almost like I'm making a bouquet instead of just seeing these in the wild. So my first stem you can see is coming in from the top right and it's coming down through the middle. And then I'm just going to scribble out some petals where I might want my petals to be. The second one is going to be slightly off to the left, but come down and cross over my right hand stem and making these scribbly petals again. And the third one is going to come in from the left and cross over the other stems and scribbling in the petals again. Just remember when you're looking at these, the petals are smaller at the top and larger at the bottom. And then you have your sketch. Let's get started with the first layer of our Snapdragons. I'm trying to get a deep purple color for this first one. So I'm mixing Opera Rose and Indigo to get a purple color. I'm also mixing up a green with Perylene Green and Cadmium Yellow Medium to get a spring green color. I'm starting these with the stem just because I want to get that movement started first. Since I have these 3 kind of being joined together at the bottom, I just want to know where my stems are going to be. So sometimes you can start with your stem. I know some people always start with their stems and leaves, or you can start with your flowers. And sometimes it just depends on the flower you're painting, like today. Snapdragons are such a cool flower, and they're pretty easy to paint, so they're fun. They can be very loose and you still know what it is. The tops usually have that green pointy little bud things at the top, and then the flowers come all the way down those stems. So let's start with our deeper purple color. You will see Snapdragons usually also have smaller petals near the top, and they kind of expand and get wider as you go down the stem. So we're just capturing that. You want to make sure when you're painting loose flowers to just be very general with it. Leave white spaces because the white spaces can be just as important as the painted spaces. They let you still have highlights in those petals without you having to do too much with the paint. So that's pretty exciting. So just continue down your stem and make your little blobs of color, and you can tell that this is already looking like a snapdragon. Such a cool thing how loose you can paint and you still know what you're painting. For this middle one, I want it to be a bit more like a magenta or fuchsia color, closer to that pink. So I added more Opera Rose to my pile, and that's giving me this beautiful magenta pink color. Again, just move down your stem. And it's okay if your different blobs of color touch. In fact, I do it on purpose because then those colors are blending together, which makes it Really interesting and beautiful. For the third one, I still want it to be purple, but I want it to be more of a bluish purple. So I added a bit more indigo to get that color. Again, you can see I am just loosely making these color blobs, leaving white spaces for highlights, and I'm just working my way down. And also remember, this is your first layer. We're going to have more layers to define some of these petals as we go. So just feel free with this layer and don't be too nervous about it. Let's add in some more of the foliage. If you look at a snapdragon, they have these little leaves coming out all the way up the stem, and they're just a neat shape because they're thin and just seem a little delicate. So all you have to do to add those is put in some curved lines. And again, it's okay if your paint is still wet from your flowers because you want those blooms to happen. It helps your painting be more interesting. At the bottom, you can add as many leaves as you want. They can overlap and they can bloom into each other because remember, this is loose. We're just trying to get a general interpretation of what this flower feels like. To get some movement in your piece, make sure your stems are flowing in different directions and your leaves are pointing in different directions. That will help you get more movement into your painting to help your eye float around the page. Notice I'm putting different shades of green in these leaves. You don't have to do that, but I do like to do that a lot to add interest, because when you look at a leaf in nature, it's not just one green color, it's a blend of many different green colors. And to get these shades, I'm using perylene green and green gold and just mixing various amounts of them together or just dropping the color in as I go. Just fill in those leaves until you feel like you have a good balance and you're happy with them. The first layer of the Snapdragon is dry, so I'm going to start adding a second layer. You can see how beautifully those colors blended together in the flowers in the middle. I love that. I'm mixing up my deep purple on the left first. I'm just going to add extra marks, and they can still be just as free and loose as the first layer. You're just adding some definition to each petal. Don't be afraid to just dab your brush around. That's all I'm doing. I'm not even really brushing. I'm just kind of dabbing and making these shapes. Leave your white spaces if you can. Try not to cover them all up. It will give you those highlights that you might like at the end. Now let's get that magenta color back. So we need more opera rose. You can see how adding this layer is adding, like, almost looks like the shadows that would be on the petals, and it just adds some definition and interest to this piece. It looked a little flat before we started doing this, and now it's getting some life to it. And again, it's okay if your colors blend together. That just adds some interest to your piece. Now to get more of that deep blue purple for the right hand stem, all right, so now we're gonna add some more green to the leaves to help them stand out a little bit more. Got my perylene green to add some dark spots. One of the things you always want to keep in mind while you're painting is if you have enough value changes. So values are how light or dark a color is. And the more you have value shifts from dark to light, the more interesting your piece will be as well. So you can see I'm just adding lines to these leaves. You just have to be a little bit brave here and try it and see what you like. And if you don't like it, that's okay. If you grab a wet paper towel, you can dab up the paint. But I do think you should just try and go for it. You might like it more than you realize once you wait a couple minutes. Just adding some darks to the rest of these leaves, and then the second layer will be done and we'll wait for it to dry. And that looks good for now. So this is looking good with 2 layers of paint on it. So I'm moving on to details. I'm using a Derwent Inktense pencil. And I love mark making. And so I love to add marks to my watercolors as well. You can see I'm just scribbling, but it adds just a little bit of interest and uniqueness to this piece. And yours will also be completely unique, which is so fun. Notice I'm not trying to make the flower realistic. I am just scribbling on each of these petals to give it a little touch of something extra. I also have a green one, so I'm going to add a few marks on my leaves. These leaves are already pretty interesting on their own. I love their shape, so I'm not going to add too much, but it is fun just to add a little definition, draw your own leaf if you want. Fill in just some lines to make it look like the veins. You can scribble around. You can go up and down the stems, scribble at the tops of the flowers, whatever you want to do. It's amazing what tiny little details like this can do for your finished piece. It just makes it look finished. I love it so much. That looks pretty good. I am noticing that I want some more green in those flowers, because when you're looking at snapdragons, there's a lot of little leaves going on in there. And so I'm mixing up a bit of a yellow green with my green gold and my perylene green. I'm just gonna fill some spaces in with this. Feel free to do this anytime you want. If you felt like your 2 layers wasn't enough, then add 1 more layer. If you want more green like I did, then add more green. That looks better to me. Just making that leaf a bit longer to help balance out the other side because I drew that leaf on the right hand side with my pencil and it was looking a little out of place. Now we get to add some splatter. So I'm going to make a purple shade, get my brush pretty wet, and then just tap it on my finger. I'm going to make it a bit more of the magenta color and add some more splatters. So fun. And this is so beautiful. I love this Snapdragon. I hope that you love yours. And if you want to share it, I would love to see what you made. Once your splatters are on here, you can let it dry. Make sure you sign your piece and then join me next week for our next flower. Remember, this is the basic tutorial for the week. This is what you will see every week through the summer unless you join me in painting through the seasons. This course was built to dive deeper into watercolor to help you learn how to sketch your flowers, how to mix your colors, different watercolor techniques every week. And I wanted to do that so that if you like a step-by-step approach and if you want more instruction instead of just painting along with me, then you can, and you have that option. Right now, the course is discounted because I'm adding the flowers as we go. And so after summer's over, the price will jump up. So jump on that discounted price now, and I will see you in there.